So today is Friday, June 13th, which is awesome, not just because it's Friday the 13th, but because we now officially have the first full week of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the books. I know it feels impossible to even imagine after all this time, but this sucker has been out and in our hands for over a week. And of course, like any good nerd and dork, I can't help but want to always be holding my Nintendo Switch 2 at all times. Whenever I can, of course, I have to do this YouTube stuff around my work schedule, but it's a portable console. The Switch 2 makes me enjoy portable gaming more than the Switch 1 did, so it's nice to be able to move it around and, again, hold this awesome device in my hands whenever I can, even when making a video for you about the Switch 2. However, that's not what I wanted to talk to you guys about, just gushing about how cool it is that the Switch 2 is out and how much I'm enjoying the device. What I actually want to do is have a discussion with you guys about expectations. The expectations that I think the gaming industry, the gaming community, game fans like me and you and everyone else had for the Switch 2 going into the release. Again, now with the first full week behind us, the launch games behind us, waiting for the next slew of games coming in July, and how those expectations might be informing how a lot of people feel about it, their interest in it, their excitement, their enjoyment, their lack of enjoyment, how much they like it or how much they hate it. There's a lot going on with the Switch 2 discussion right now, and I'm sure that if you're watching this video, you're probably very aware that a lot of the discussion is just fighting and yelling and people taking very strong sides on this side or that side. You're either pro Switch 2 or you're anti Switch 2. You're pro Nintendo or you're anti Nintendo. And yes, to a degree, this kind of console warring has always existed, even since I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, in the 8 and 16-bit era. There certainly was that version of console warring. It's nothing like what it's become today with the advent of social media and the internet and smartphones and everything and YouTube. It's just a different landscape. And so, yes, console warring between Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft, it's been going on for 20 years the way it is now. And so you could say, at first glance, what we're seeing with the Switch 2 discourse is maybe the same as all console warring has ever been. And it is. It actually is kind of the same thing, but obviously it's at a fever pitch simply because the Switch 2 is brand new. But I think that when we look at how people, even Nintendo fans, are analyzing the Switch 2, there's a lot of, I don't want to just say negativity because that feels too broad, but there's, I guess I'll say nuance. There's a lot of nuance that fans and non-fans alike are throwing into the conversation. There's probably more non-nuance. There's more crazy people just yelling batshit theories and concepts and opinions out there, and just, on both sides, just kind of being totally crazy. But there's also a lot of people who just seem to have a different lens that they're viewing the Switch 2 through when compared to how everyone reacted to the Switch 1. And I think that's the main thesis of this conversation, is how the expectations going from the Wii U into the Switch 1 played out versus the expectations going from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. The true reality that we all have to be aware of is that going from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2 set a higher bar and a higher expectation, and one could argue a higher standard of quality with what the Switch 2 is supposed to be. So the Switch 2 has now released, again, 1 week ago, in a very, very different landscape, both for gaming and specifically for Nintendo and their business, compared to the landscape that the Switch 1 launched into. Naturally, the big difference there was that Nintendo was following up their sadly unsuccessful Wii U with their first ever attempt at a hybrid device with the Nintendo Switch. The name seemed strange. The Wii U used a tablet controller. Suddenly, their successor to that was only the tablet, but it could also be played on a TV, but then also taken with you on the go wherever you went. And so the excitement was very strong, a little trepidation early on, but ultimately the excitement was very strong. And I think it's because the Wii U unfortunately let a lot of people down. And longtime viewers, and those of you who know me, you already know what I'm going to say here, right? I love the Wii U. I will defend the Wii U till my deathbed. You can put that on my tombstone. Here lies Rob. He loved the Wii U and he still plays it to this day, even when he's 95 years old. That's how I feel and felt about the Wii U. And I mean, I've said this too. My Wii U is hooked up to my main TV in my main living room with my 65-inch TV where my PS5, my Series X, and also now my Switch 2 is hooked up. I still play the Wii U. I liked it that much. That being said, it was a massive commercial failure, unfortunately, despite the amazing library and, in my opinion, the awesome controller. And so Nintendo's task in releasing something coming off of the Wii U was to reignite the passion for gamers and Nintendo fans again, and to kind of bounce back, to sell Nintendo fans and the gaming world on the idea that you might not have liked what the Wii U was, but we have the better version of that with better graphics and this amazing Zelda game at launch, even though, yes, it came out on the Wii U as well. And also the promise of the future with that first E3 Direct where they showed us Metroid Prime 4 amongst so many other things, and Mario was coming out at the end of the year. So, coming off of the Wii U, the only place Nintendo could go was up, right? I think that's the thing I'm trying to say. The Wii U sold 14 million units. Very sad to me. I think it deserved at least 50 million, but whatever. So they only had up to go, and not only did the Switch take them up, it took them into the stratosphere, surpassing all expectations. And so if you think about it, in 2017, coming off the Wii U, they only had up to go. Now they're all the way up here with the third best-selling piece of video game hardware ever. I'm sure by the next investors update, we're going to find out it is the second best-selling hardware of all time. And sure, despite my lack of commitment on whether or not the Switch 1 will ever surpass the PS2, it certainly has the PS2 in its sights, so maybe, before all is said and done, it does become the #1 best-selling console of all time. So, suddenly, launching your successor console in the landscape where you have the #3/2 best-selling device of all time, people's general viewpoint of what they want from that device, from that successor next-generation console, the quality of it they've come to expect to you over the course of the Switch 1 era, everything is different. And so that's why I think an added layer to the discourse around the Switch 2 we see right now. Yes, the first layer is just typical console warring and people have strong opinions about Nintendo on both sides. The other element is that even some of the super fans have a different level of expectation, a higher level of expectation, simply because the Switch 1 was so great, had a great library, and it sold so insanely well. So then I think the question becomes, is it a good or a bad thing that the average gaming fan, and whether you're a Nintendo fan or a non-Nintendo fan or somewhere in the middle, is it a good or a bad thing that the average gaming fan has higher expectations for the Switch 2 going into this brand new generation? And I could see people making a case for both. I think you could say it's bad simply because people are a lot more critical about the Switch 2 right now. Even Nintendo fans are saying, well, like, I mean, Mario Kart's fun, but it's not as good as I wanted. The open world's boring. It shouldn't be $80. I wish there was more launch games. You know, I wish Metroid Prime 4 was a launch. Hello, that's what I wanted as well. You know, complaining about, you know, legitimate things like the battery life, which I totally agree with, certain issues with how the Switch 2 fits in the dock, some people maybe don't like the Joy-Cons or the kickstand, all these little big and small things that even diehard Nintendo fans are really kind of picking apart about the Switch 2, whereas on the Switch 1, I don't think many people were willing to do, simply because the Wii U, again, sadly let so many people down. We were just happy to have something so great, so impressive, so fun, so innovative, and again, launching with Zelda, that everyone just felt good about whatever Nintendo was going to do. With the higher expectation comes the ability to pick apart something like how the kickstand feels, or if they like the magnet Joy-Cons, or it's too easy to scratch the screen when putting it in the dock, and all these other little things. And again, whatever they feel about the game library. So that's where one could argue it's a bad thing. But I actually think it's more fair to call it a neutral or a good thing, because even though I love the Switch 2, I have very little complaints really other than the battery, but I also play mostly on the TV, so I can survive. I think it's a good thing in the sense that it is actually better for people, especially the diehard fanboys of whatever console or company or product you're talking about, to have a critical eye. And so, yeah, you might see a bit more divisive or a negative conversation, or even diehard fans being willing to nitpick things about the Switch 2 that we didn't see with the Switch 1. But I think it's good for the consumer to feel more educated and to have a high expectation, a high standard, especially for Nintendo, who, in my opinion, is always setting the standard when it comes to their game output anyway. They make the best games, in my opinion. So they have a high standard, and game fans want them to meet that standard. And so, yeah, maybe somebody doesn't like that a lot of fans are nitpicking certain things about the Switch 2. And a lot of them, I'll even admit, they're nitpicking things I don't even care about personally. So their opinions don't even match mine. I just love the Switch 2, pretty much everything about it so far. But it's good for people to have a critical eye. Even diehard fans, if you're talking about your favorite band, your favorite movie, your favorite director, your favorite video game company, your favorite video game franchise, your favorite sports team, whatever it is, it's good to be critical, because we need to hold companies who make any kind of product we like in any kind of industry accountable for doing the right things and the wrong things. And so this is all a reason for me to kind of blab about one of the takeaways I've seen from all of the back and forth discourse and the people trying really hard to smear the Switch 2 and say it's not as powerful as people think, or it's not doing things as well as people are saying, and Cyberpunk doesn't really look good or run well, and a lot of purposeful lies and misinformation getting out there just to try to smear it by crazy people. And then you also have people trying really hard to defend it, some people going too far, some people, I think, approaching it in a balanced way. I like to think I'm one of those people. But, maybe you disagree, and that's fine. I think that the nature of what we're seeing right now, one of the elements is everything I've laid out here. The Switch 2 just launched at a different time for Nintendo, in a different landscape, and a different time of the company's success and popularity, because Nintendo, for all of their consistency over the decades, they've had a lot of ups and downs and ebbs and flows with how they've been received or perceived by the gaming community. Like the Wii is a great example where a lot of the perception really wasn't super positive at the time by gaming press and even by some of the core game fans, but at the same time, it sold over 100 million units. It was crazy successful. It had a lot of great games, had a lot of really bad, shitty games too, and weird shovelware and all that stuff. And a lot of Nintendo fans like me, we loved and defended it, but also there were things that didn't do well. So I feel like the Wii fell into this strange category of like the best and the worst sides of Nintendo and their perception all rolled into one generation. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, the Wii was 20 years ago, so I would like to think all of you were old enough to have experienced that, but also there could be 15 or 16-year-old people watching my videos that didn't know anything about the Wii, which just blows my mind to even think about. That doesn't feel real, but it is technically possible. But for those of us who lived through the Wii generation, I'd be curious if you understand that comparison and if you feel the same about how it felt at that time. And again, I'm a Wii fan. I still have a whole collection of Wii games, and I play my Wii games on my Wii U because the Wii U is dope and it plays Wii U games, and you can use your Wii remote and nunchuck. So anyway, that's all a side tangent. The point is, I think that it'll be interesting to see what kind of momentum Nintendo can keep up now that the Switch 2 is a week old, and what happens after next month, after Donkey Kong comes out, the next big first-party game, by the end of the year, when we've had games like Metroid Prime 4, my baby, coming sometime soon, and Pokemon came out. In theory, a lot of other third-party games. I still expect, like, Call of Duty, Black Ops 7, the recently announced Black Ops 7. I think that's going to be coming to the Switch 2 this year, and who knows what other big third-party games will also kind of make the transition. So, when we have 6 months behind us to look at the Switch 2 in the library and how they might have improved a couple of things here and there with some updates, and how it continues to sell. I mean, I'm not even diving into the fact that it broke records over the first 4 days with like 3.5 million units. So it's the best, fastest selling console of all time after 4 days. It's insane. So the popularity so far is on point. Will that maintain? I sure think it will, but we don't really know until we are 6 or 7 months down the road. And so I think that we have to consider, as I've said many times, to wrap this up, the expectation people had. Even diehard Nintendo fans had very high expectations and are willing to have a more critical eye looking at the Switch 2. Yes, that means you find more people finding negative things to say about it, or things they maybe don't like about it. But as I've said, and I will double down again at the end here, it's good for people to have a critical eye, especially super fans, because you could argue the super haters of anything, a console, a movie, a band, whatever, super haters have the least critical eye, because they go in blindly just saying it's terrible and I hate it and it's bad, whereas if a super fan is being critical of something, then they're really being genuine and sincere with their critiques, you know? Like, I hate the battery for the Switch 2 based on what I've seen so far. And that's something I just simply don't like, you know? But I pretty much like everything else. I'm just waiting for Donkey Kong at this point, so... Anywho, starting to ramble here at the end, so I will wrap this up. Yeah, share what you guys think below. What were your expectations going into the Switch 2 versus going into the Switch 1? And thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.